inside us we cannot contain. Your love will surely come find us like blazing wildfire, singing your name. God of mercy, sweet love of mine, I have surrendered to your design. May this offering stretch across the skies. These hallelujah be multiplied. Your love is like radiant diamond bursting inside us. We cannot contain. Your love will surely come find us like blazing wildfire, singing your name. God of mercy, sweet love of mine, I have surrendered to your design. May this offering stretch across the sky. These hallelujah be multiplied. God of mercy, sweet love of mine, and I have surrendered to your design. May this offering stretch across the
Test,
sky.
testing, testing, testing.
These hallelujah be multiplied. These hallelujah be multiplied. you're pleased and that I'm never alone. You're a good, good Father. It's who you are. It's who you are. It's who you are, and I'm loved by you. It's who I am. It's who I am. It's who I am. Oh, and I've seen many searching for answers far and wide, but I know we're all searching for answers. Only you provide, 'cause you know just what we need before we say a word. You're a good, good Father. It's who you are. It's who you are. It's who you are, and I'm loved by you. It's who I am. It's who I am. It's who I am. Because you are perfect in all of your ways. You are perfect in all of your ways. You are perfect in all of your ways to us. You are perfect in all of your ways. Oh, you're perfect in all of your ways. You are perfect in all of your ways to us. Oh, it's love so undeniable. I can hardly speak. Peace so unexplainable. I can hardly think as you call me. Deeper still as you call me. Deeper still as you call me. Deeper still into love. Love, love. You're a good, good Father. It's who you are. It's who you are. It's who you are, and I'm loved by you. It's who I am. It's who I am. It's who I am. You're a good, good Father. It's who you are. It's who you are. It's who you are, and I'm loved by you. It's who I am. It's who I am. It's who I am. You're a good, good Father. It's who you are. It's who you are. It's who you are, and I'm loved by you. It's who I am. It's who I am. It's who I am. You're good. You are perfect in all of your ways. It's who you are. It's who you are, and I'm loved. You are perfect in all of your ways. It's who I am. It's who I am. If grace was a kingdom, I stopped at the gate, thinking I don't deserve to pass through after all the mistakes that I've made. Oh, but I heard a whisper as heaven bent down. you know that the first will be last and the last get a crown. And now I'm just a beggar in the presence of a king. I wish I could bring so much more, but if it's true, you use broken things, then here I am, Lord, I'm all yours. Oh, the pages of history, they tell me it's true, that it's never the perfect, it's always the ones with the scars that you use. Oh, it's the rebels and the prodigals, it's the humble and the weak, all the misfit heroes you chose. Tell me there's hope for sinners like me. And now I'm just a beggar in the presence of a king. I wish I could bring so much more.
All right. Well, let's go ahead and get started here. If anybody doesn't have one of these, we've got some handouts for those who are going to be in the car maintenance class. Do you want one of these? Do you want a packet, Kim? Or okay, Justin, you want one? Here you go. All righty. So we're pretty close on time here, so we better get rolling. We got a lot of stuff to cover. So I know that there's a few more people who are coming, but they'll just have to catch us as we get going. All right. Well, thanks a lot for coming out today. The purpose of this class is to give just a basic foundation in auto maintenance stuff to help you understand what's happening. Now, there's some groups who are going to stay here. And in the class, there's Han Jun and Jason and Esther, and perhaps some others are going to be going out, and they'll be sharing the good news of Jesus with people in the area, distributing materials on the Jesus video. So if you guys want to go ahead and head out, you can do that. And for those who are staying, we'll go ahead and get started. If you haven't registered yet, please register for the class just so we can keep track of who's involved and what all is happening. So there's going to be an indoor part and an outdoor part. So the indoor part is we'll be going over some basic materials, and then you're going to get a choice once we move to outdoors what options, and we'll talk about that in a minute. So we get going here. Get this going here. Oh, there it goes. All right, so basic car maintenance. Now, as I said, we got classroom, about 20 minutes, then we'll break into teams and go outside. You'll have an option of either under the hood, and we'll see what that means a little bit later, or an option of changing tire. Each of those is about 40 minutes. Now, if things go really fast, you'll be able to do both, but I don't know, it's a lot to do in a short amount of time. Then we'll clean up and wrap up back in here. All right, so you should have received a packet with handouts. You've got about 6 different things, an outline, automotive systems. We're going to be going through that material here as we get going. In the class part that we're going to cover is these 5 topics. First, automotive systems. What's in a car? How do the various systems work together to make it all work? And then secondarily, we're going to talk about those warning lights in your dash. What do they mean? Which ones should you pay attention to? And how should you pay attention? Then we'll look at a basic maintenance schedule. How often should you be doing things on your car? You know, different people will tell you different things. Sometimes there's options in there. But then we're going to look at key maintenance components and some normal fees associated with those. So this is where if you're paying a lot more than that, just know that, you know, you're probably getting ripped off. And then finally, some basic tools. All right? So we look at the basic automotive systems. And there's a diagram in your handouts for this if you can't see it really closely, if you want to take notes or anything on there. So, you know, we're going to be going over gas-powered cars. Obviously, it changes a little bit when you get to electric cars. They still have a lot of these systems, but not all of them, okay? So some of the key things in a gas-powered engine, you know, if you think about from the moment you go and turn on your car, different systems are working together to make it all happen. So the first thing that happens, you go and turn on the car either by turning the key or pushing a button or whatever your car does. And what do you think the first system being used right there when you're turning the key or turning on the ignition? What system do you think is being used in the car? So you got different things. You got cooling, lubrication, safety, ignition, electrical. Any guesses? Okay, ignition. Yes. Electrical. That's right. Because the ignition is a subset of the whole electrical system. So there's a lot going on with the electrical. And the main powerhouse behind the electrical system when your car is off is what do you think? Your battery. Yes. And so if your battery wears out, your car's not starting. So it's a key component. And we're going to be talking about that. So we've got inside here, we've got, if I could get this, there we go. The ignition system inside of the car, right in there. Once the battery turns a starter motor and gets the engine starting to spin. Okay, the engine starts spinning. As it spins, then other systems come into play. Some fuel supply systems down there, because the engine is burning what? Gas. It's actually lots of explosions going on inside of your car. And what do you think ignites the gas and makes it explode? A spark, which is part of which system? Electrical. Good job, good job. A little help from the... Yeah, so the electrical system and the ignition is coming together, and it starts to create explosions happening inside. Now, if you think about that, if you've got explosions happening inside of your car and gas is burning, literally burning and exploding, what's that going to do to the temperature of the engine? Yes. What? It's going to go up. Yes, it's going to get hot. And so if that's happening, what are you going to need? Cooling. Yes, you need something to cool it all down. And so what are some components in the cooling system? A radiator. Yeah, that's this thing that's usually out in the front of the car. The radiator, it circulates a combination of water and coolant through it, and that goes through the engine. Sometimes there's also an oil cooler, depending on the type of car. But inside of that, not only that, but you've got metal. Your engine is like metal, and it's like steel. And you got these explosions going on. You got steel rubbing against steel, and it's starting to move. What do you think that's if you have steel just rubbing against steel, that's going to wear out, and that's going to cause more heat. So you need something to help you out so that doesn't happen. What do you think you need? Lubrication system, yes. So the lubrication system here, it sends oil. Now down at the very bottom of the engine, there is what's called an oil pan. It holds a whole ton of oil, somewhere between 4 to 9 quarts. So it's like a gallon or 2 gallons of oil. And that oil circulates up through the engine to make sure that as the metal is moving past metal, that it's smooth and that keeps down the heat, but also prevents the engine from wearing out. And of course, that oil is there where all that explosions are happening, and so it gets all soot in there and pieces of metal. So that's why you have to change your oil pretty regularly. That's one of the maintenance things. But you've got your car now starting to, the pistons, I'm not going to go into all of the detail about how the motor works. Maybe that'll be for the second class. But the engine starts turning. And now you have to move the car, right? So you got to transfer the power from the engine to the wheels. So there's another component that does that. The transmission system. Now, this picture here is actually showing transmission in the back, which that does happen on some cars. But actually, most cars nowadays, probably most of the cars that you're driving and I drive, most of them are front-wheel drive. So in a rear-wheel drive engine, the engine sits so that it's at the front of the car is the front of the engine, and out of the back of the engine, it's spinning, and it connects to a transmission, and that goes back to the back wheels. Now, when it's a front-wheel drive, what they do is they turn the engine sideways so that the power going out can go directly to the front wheels. Okay, so you have your transmission up front. But the transmission allows you to change gears, go forward, backwards, and it converts the power of the engine to the power of the wheels. So these are some of the various systems that work together in a car. Then you've got other things like suspension and exhaust, because now all this burning has to come out, the fumes come out, and that's through the exhaust system. So these are various systems within your car. Hey, Ange, here's a set of handouts. Could somebody... Okay. Thanks, Augustine. All right. So those are the automotive systems. So moving along then, warning lights. So you start up your car, you're driving your car, and in your dash, different warning lights come on. Now, in most cars, the good news is that those warning lights are color-coded. The colors actually mean something. So the red ones, if you have a red light come on, usually that means, hey, something's really bad and you need to pay attention now before you drive. Okay, so some examples of that, and this, I apologize, it's a little dark up here, but on your handouts you can see it. You've got things like this one here is really serious. Looks like a little oil can is what that picture is. If you ever see an oil can come on, it's like, oh, you better not be driving your car, because that means the oil is low, the oil pressure is low. Probably either your oil is extremely low or something is going wrong. Now, my wife Emmy had an experience. She didn't realize how serious it was. And an earlier car in her life she had, and as she was driving it, the oil light came on, and she continued to drive the car. Now, that's not a good thing if you're not getting oil, because remember, you've got metal going against metal. It starts heating up, And what happens if you don't have enough oil, your pistons, those are the things moving up and down, transferring the explosion to the power of the car, they're going to get really hot. And then the inside of the cylinders get really hot, and pretty soon one of two things is going to happen. You're either going to basically melt those two things together, or your engine is going to crack in some ways. Basically, it's going to destroy your engine. And you don't want to do that because replacing an engine is probably like $4,000 or $5,000. So, thing you want to avoid, never ever, if you see that red light come on, man, you want to stop. Now, the other one that's common also is the battery. Now, that's a little less, it's something you need to pay attention to, but basically what it's telling you is that there's a problem. Often it's a problem with charging. So once your car starts moving, you use the battery to turn on the car, right? But then once the car starts going, there's another part on the car called an alternator. And it's generating electricity and it charges the battery. But if your alternator goes out, your car can still run for a little while. It'll just be running off the battery. But it's not going to go too long, especially if you're using air conditioning and all these other kinds of things. It's going to be sucking that electricity out. And this little light will come on to tell you, hey, warning, your car is probably not going to start next time. So pay attention to that. You need to check to make sure the battery's hooked up. And usually it's an alternator problem. Your battery's not charging. Another symbol up here for these red ones is this weird looking one. And I'll show you, there's a whole bunch. Different cars have different lights, right? But that's like something bad is happening. It could be different cars, that's a tire related thing. Other ones, it's an engine related thing. But it's a serious engine issue. Of course, you've got the seatbelt thing. This is if you don't have your seatbelts buckled. You probably are aware of that one. It dings, dings, dings. And then the last one here that's red is, hey, you've got a problem with your airbags. They may not inflate, or maybe they did already. So these are some warning red ones. Now the next one over is a very common one. It's yellow. And sometimes people freak out. Oh no, what is that? Well, in different cars, it can mean different things, but it's generally check engine. So that brings us to the next section. So the red is stop driving the car, deal with this right away. Okay? The yellow is usually your car needs service. The most common thing you're going to see is oil change indications. Yellow or orange. And then you'll have some that are green and blue or white. And they're fine. They're just regular. Like you get a blue one when you turn on your high beams, a green one when you have your lights on very often. Different cars have different colorations, but green, blue, and white generally fine. Yellow is, hey, you may want to look into this. It's not like urgent. You have to stop the car right now. Very often it's the reminder to get your oil changed. Now, cars have lots of different things, right? Some have the yellow engine. Some have maintenance required, service required, a yellow wrench. Some say oil change needed. All of these are indications when it's yellow that you need to change your oil. It just reminds you it's set every 3,000 miles. You can reset it. There's ways to do that, but it's just reminding you to change your oil. Now, if the engine light is orange, then there's also a check-in light, which that actually can be like hundreds of different things. But you can bring it into either a mechanic, or you can actually go to an auto store, and they have a little code reader. They'll come out and hook it up for you a lot of times for free, and they'll read the codes to tell you what's going wrong with your car. Save yourself a lot of money, because if you go into a dealer, you'd be paying, you got an engine light coming on, and you're probably not walking out of there with less than $500 paid. But you can go to a mechanic, and it's probably more like maybe $100, depending on what it is. But you can go and get it checked out, at least for free, at like an AutoZone or an O'Reilly's. They'll come out and do it if they're not too busy. O'Reilly's tends to be less busy. I don't know. Probably depends on the one. So tons of other lights. But again, red ones, deal with those quickly. Yellow, lots of different yellow things. I'm not going to walk through all of these, but obviously your car will have slightly different lights, but the colorations of them are critical. And by the way, if you've got any questions as we're going through this, feel free to raise your hand. All right? All right. So, now, maintenance. Key maintenance items. Now, in your papers, I didn't put the dollar amounts on here. So, if you want to take notes on that or whatever, and these are kind of general notes. Let's say your battery won't start. Now, a battery typically is going to last 4 to 5 years. About 50,000 miles. So if you have a brand new battery and your battery doesn't start, you probably just need to jump start it. So a common scenario is you've left something on. Now, newer cars, they'll either ding or they'll even turn off lights and stuff, but they'll often have ways that you can still drain it, like certain plugs, like the ashtrays. If you're using that to get power out, sometimes you have something connected to there. If you don't unplug it, certain of them will be on even when the car's off. You could drain your battery. Okay? So in which case, you'll need to jump start. We're going to show you how to do that in the under the hood lesson today. Just show you. So the first step is if your car, often what will happen is your car will either go something like this and you're trying to start it. That's it. Or sometimes it'll just be click, 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 click. It's relays that are turning on, or sometimes nothing. No lights, no nothing. That's a very dead battery. Okay. So those are something, if you're going to buy a new battery, just so you know, once you have to do that occasionally, it's about $100, $120 in that range. So the next one down, oil. Oil dips. Yes, David. Comment about the battery, please do.
I like going to AutoZone for batteries.
Yes.
They install them for free.
Yes.
And they also, if you have a battery go out on you, if there's an issue, they'll prorate the amount too. So, and that's even if you're driving like really high temperature places or whatnot. If you buy from there, you take it back to anyone, they look it up, they say, oh, you were supposed to get X number of years out of it, we'll credit you a certain amount of dollars if you didn't get X number of years.
Yep. Yeah, so a lot of stores will do that. So AutoZone definitely does.
They'll also test your battery and your alternator.
Yep, they'll test them. So now the key is that some of them are very busy. If they're really busy, they cannot come out. So you got to find an AutoZone that's not as busy. But the other stores do that too. Actually, Walmart will install them for you and keep track of them. But AutoZone is a really good one. I have a really bad story about an AutoZone where they couldn't change it. They were too busy, and I said, oh, I'll do it. And so they put it on a cart. And it wasn't bad because of them, but I was wearing flip-flops. And on the way back in with my old battery, the cart tipped over and the battery landed right on my toe. That hurt really bad. Don't do that. Don't drop a battery on your toe.
It's also important to know about batteries that some vehicles, especially newer, really high-tech vehicles, they actually need to be reprogrammed with a new battery. You actually have to go into the computer. Not something normal
Yes. Okay. Wow. Advanced. Okay. Well, I haven't encountered that one, but that would be a high-tech feature. Yeah, so watch for that. Oil. So we'll see this in a minute. And by the way, here's a picture of a battery inside of a car. So when it comes to oil, typically in cars, your dipstick is going to have it'll be yellow most of the times now. In older cars, they were black or whatever, but they've kind of standardized now, and it will be like a yellow loop. It won't always be in the middle there, but just look for some yellow loop somewhere. That's your dipstick. That is where you can go and check your oil level. So Angelina recently learned where that was at because her car was making funny noises, and we went to check. Now, when you check your oil, there is the end of the dipstick is what this is here, and there will sometimes be a little pattern on there, or sometimes there will be two holes, and it shows you the low and the high. And we'll get to do this. You'll get to do this yourself under the hood, check the oil. Well, her oil wasn't even on the dipstick. It was really low. That was not good. So we immediately went and bought oil and added it. But this is something that you want to do. Now, if you go to get your oil changed, you can buy the stuff for an oil change. Like you can buy oil, but you need to have like a pan to catch it in. You'll need a new oil filter that will be specific to your car. So you can go into like an AutoZone or somewhere and get your kind of oil. Now, there's a whole bunch of options on kinds of oil. Like, don't even get me started. Your car might suggest a type of oil, and you have choices between regular and synthetic. And when you go to get your oil change, if your car has over 75,000, they will say, oh, you should get the high mileage oil. So all that is oil that has additive in it. If your car is leaking, it helps stop up the leaks. So if your car is not, don't bother with it otherwise. But any rate, you should keep your oil between the add and the full. That's typically 1 quart between there. Now, if you're changing your oil every 3,000 miles, this should not be an issue, unless you have a car that is either leaking oil or burning oil. You can tell leaking oil by all the puddles underneath where you park. Burning oil, you can tell in the exhaust if your car is smoking a lot. So there's 2 colors to tell where it's burning and all but those would be reasons that you have to change your oil or add oil in between. Like when I started out, I had an old car, my first car, and so I would have to add oil in between times or the 3,000 miles to change it. So I would keep a quart of oil in my car, and I would check it. When it's low, I'd add a little bit. Yeah. Good question. So it does. Synthetic oil is surprisingly higher quality. It will last longer. Regular oil, generally between oil changes about 3,000 miles. Synthetic is more like 5,000 or so. So it will last longer, but you pay more, right? But if you pay about twice as much for synthetic and you change it every half as much, it kind of balances out. So On my expensive car, I always get synthetic. It does lubricate better and lasts longer. Yeah.
It seems like most new cars recommend or require synthetic oil. Would it invalidate your warranty?
No, they wouldn't know what kind of oil you've used or not used. It's just that you just have to change it more frequently. It's recommended for cars probably just because it does actually lubricate and last longer.
Because I go by my car schedule, it tells me when I'm supposed to change my oil.
Yeah.
But if it's using the wrong kind of oil.
So if it's, again, 3,000 miles, which is approximately 3 months. So most people drive about 1,000 miles a month. So that's why, but 3,000 miles for non-synthetic and about 5 or sometimes 6 for synthetic. So. Yep. Yes. Yeah. Yeah, so that's a separate thing, is when you're buying oil or looking at them, they'll look up, like if you go to get it changed, they'll put in the kind of oil that your car needs. But there's different weights. So you'll see things like 0W40, 0W10, 5W30. Those are weights of the oil. The lower the number, the lighter weight, the less viscosity it is. So different cars. And when you live up north, you actually have to consider between winter and summer, because in the winter you need it thinner because it's colder and it'll be sluggish. So at any rate, down here you don't have to worry so much about that. Okay, if you go to get your oil changed, cheap is about $30 at a place that just does the oil and filter. Then they'll upsell you on all various things. Like if you start doing synthetic, then you're going to be up to $90 or something like that for an oil filter. Air filter. So this is one of the things that almost every time if you go to get your oil changed, they'll say, "Oh man, you need your air filter changed." Usually not. They'll get it out and they'll show you. It's like, that looks brand new to me. So, but it looks something like this here. That's, and you'll see under the hood will crack open where the air filters are. This one that they're showing here is kind of dirty, but it's not clogged up with a lot of stuff. What you can actually do with a filter is you can take it out and just pound it on the ground and kind of shake stuff out. But generally, an air filter, depending on where you're driving and how dirty it gets, but maybe every 6 months or 6,000 miles. So it's like every other oil change. Now, again, depending on where you're at, maybe you need it less. You just look at it. You can clean them out. But here's the thing. If you do it yourself, you can go get an air filter like AutoZone, and they're like, for most cars, super simple to put in. Now, there's some that it's like a pain. So you'll find out for your car today, at least you'll be able to see where they're at. Sometimes they're just like clips. You go, pull off the clips, pull it out. I mean, you could replace it 5 minutes. You can buy them at like AutoZone for $25 or less, depending on the car and how big and all those kinds of things. But if you have them do it, they're going to charge you $75 to $100 at an oil change place. So just a quick money saver, because they're usually pretty easy. Windshield wiper fluid, kind of, you'll see it typically is in a container like this. It's kind of a clear plastic, often with a blue lid. You can buy a gallon of that for $5, at the auto store. They often will top it up when you go get your oil change if it's a good one. Otherwise, they'll inspect it and really not do anything. They'll charge you $20 to add. Oh, I see you need to you need to flush your radiator or your windshield wiper. Tire inspection. So it's something that you should do on a regular basis. Tires often have these little wear indicators. Now, it's not really good to drive them down to no tread. I've done that before, and your tire won't typically go out. But if you're driving in the rain, that's kind of, hydroplane city. So it gets kind of dangerous. But inside of the tread, you'll see that there's like these little bars that go across occasionally. And they're in various places. So if your tread wears down to that point, and different cars have slightly different ways, but often there's an indicator you can see, okay, if it's getting down to there, you may want to go get some new tires. Now, if you're tight on money, you can go a little ways below that. Just be careful in the rain. But if you're going to replace your tires, they're going to be, depending on your car, right? Some smaller cars, like a little Honda Civic, actually, I think those tires, the cheap ones, are like $36, so it's like a deal. But very often it's $50. If you have a truck like Micaiah, you can't get anything for less than $100. And so the bigger the tire, all of the more things. So typically you're going to be spending $50 to $100 a tire. At any rate, radiator fluid. So check on it occasionally. I said check every 3 months. So the radiator, typically on newer cars, back in the old days they didn't have these, but now there's usually a radiator and it has a fill cap on it. Additionally, there's an overflow tank, and it's usually right next to it, and it's plastic. So generally, when you are wanting to fill it up, just fill up this. See, they're pouring it into the overflow tank. One thing never do. Never open your radiator when it's hot. Because if you do that, you could have boiling water squirting up on you, and you can get burned pretty badly. Now, in the old days where you had to fill that, you'd have to kind of slowly let the pressure out. But now with these overflow tanks, you just put it in there, and it sucks it out and into the radiator. Okay, and there's levels on there. Okay, you can buy the coolant bottles, like a gallon, for $7-10 at AutoZone, maybe less. Fan belts, look at them. I mean, some cars, the fan belts, there's some that are easy to exchange. Then there's other ones like this. It's called a serpentine belt, and it winds over, and there's one belt that drives like everything. Man, they're big and expensive, and unless you've done a good bit of car work before, you don't want to try tackling that yourself, changing it. But what you can do is look at it and see if there's wear. So for instance, in this zone here, these ones look pretty decent, right? They're just solid, but when it starts wearing, you'll get cracks between them. And you'll see gaps and holes in those should be nice clean rubber. Other ones, you're going to want to look at the top of the belt, like in this zone. And if along the edges, like this one, it looks like there's some fraying along there. So if it's frayed, or if there's a scoring, sometimes things will rub on it and it'll wear a hole in the top. So if you see wear, certain kinds of belts you could change yourself, otherwise bring it into a mechanic. Then the last one, brake fluid. Typically is going to be back. It's in often a clearish container like this. Typically it's going to be in front of the driver, pretty close to where you're putting your brake on. So it's not always. Sometimes they have it in different parts, different areas in the car. This one actually looks like it's on the passenger side. But at any rate, just check, and you can see on the side of these containers like that, there's typically going to be a high and a low. And for brake fluid and other transmission fluid, there'll actually be high and low for when it's hot and for when it's cold. So two different measures. It actually expands pretty significantly when it's hot. All right, so moving along. So how are we doing on time? Are we behind or 11:21? Okay, we're 10 minutes behind, 20 minutes behind. All right, we're going outside. So we have two options. The under the hood option, you're going to be finding out how to open your hood. Every car is a little bit different. Identify the key maintenance parts. So things like where's the battery, where's the brake fluid, where are all those things. And then you're going to, on your car, check. If you don't have a car, we'll share around. You can see it done on another car. And then how to jump start a battery. And then the teacher will show you're probably going to run out of time here. So checking the air filter, checking belts. Option 2 is changing a tire. So again, if you bought a car, we'll bring your cars up and you'll be able to find out, hey, where is your spare tire? Where is your jack and the tools, and how do you get them out? And where do you put it underneath? And all those kinds of things. So we don't have the time to do probably both of these today, but if you want to do both, we're going to be doing this class future times, right? So you can do one this time and then the other parts another time. All right, so by show of hands, who wants to do the under the hood? Okay, so we've got 3. Who wants to do change the tire? And 3, 4. Okay, 3 and 4. So we're perfectly divided. So I think that the changing the tire is actually more time intensive. So what we'll do is we'll have 2 teachers doing change the tire and 1 doing under the hood. Okay? So Matthew, David, and myself are going to be your fearless instructors. Fearful, fearless, I don't know. We're helping you out. So we've all done basic maintenance quite a bit. So Matthew or David, do you have a preference of tire or hood? Okay, all right. So if you want to do under the hood, go to David. Now, David, what car did you bring today? Honda Odyssey. Okay. So who else wanted to do under the hood? If you wanted to do under the hood, go by David. And so Micaiah's, you're going to do under the hood. His car is a really good one for demonstrating. I mean, you'll want to do it on each of them, but as a starting point, it's big and spread out, and people can identify them. So once you get into an Odyssey, things are a little more cramped in there, but it's good to find out where they're at, right? So, and then for the tire changing, since we have 4 people, we'll do two apiece, so you'll be able to do it all on your car. So this is really actually quite excellent. So what I recommend then is, David, where did you park your car? Is it? Okay. So why don't we have you and your group right up in front of the front door here, and then Matthew. Yes, so, yep, so I think where you're parked right now, if you're still there. Yes. Yeah, so we'll do two on that side. So you can do the one that's furthest over, and I'll be furthest over to the front of the building, and I'll move over like on the other side of the kids' doors. So then we just need to split up between the two groups. So if you're going to be with David, go pull your cars up to be in front, okay, so that they're all there, so you'll be able to run through that. Good, good, good point. And so then for the tire change, who are you two and Larry and Justin? Okay, so how about if you two, just to shake it up, go with Matthew, and Larry and Justin will go with me. So if you could, Larry, if you brought a car, bring it over on that side. Cool. All righty. So just a quick wrap up for today. Hopefully that was helpful. What I'd like to do is, if we get this going here. So feedback. So if you could fill out, just point your phones up at there, and just give feedback on the class, because we want to make sure that we're continuing to get them better each time. So if you wouldn't mind filling that out, just going to ask you for an overall rating, 1 to 5, and then areas that were good, and then is there any areas that could improve? So if you just take a few minutes and fill that out, definitely appreciate it. Yeah, when I use there's a scan QR code thing here too. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Oh, lovely. Okay. We'll fix that. All right. So, um, so the next thing is, so next week, we're not going to be having a class, but our topic for next week, we'll have a discussion, how to fix hurting or broken relationships. So we'll be back here. So come on out. Also invite your friends. Again, the next session where we're doing the trainings, we're going to be doing these every third week of the month. And so the next class will probably be a house fixing thing, like doing wall fixing, plumbing fixing, things like that around the house. And then we'll probably do the next car one, because some people didn't get a chance to do both. We'll do the other one maybe, so the next month, what's this current month? We're in March now. So in April, we'll probably do the first version of the home repair stuff, like how to fix a hole in the wall, unclog sinks, basic things like that. And then we'll pick up the car one again, so that'll be April, May. Okay? So just, and we'll publish a schedule of where these will be going. But again, for next week, topic, how to fix hurting or broken relationships. So, hope you all had a good time. I hope the class was beneficial for you. Thanks for coming out. And with that, it's a wrap. Let me just pray and we'll close. So, Father, in Jesus' name, I thank you that we could be here today. I thank you for the opportunity to learn, the opportunity to meet new friends, the opportunity to grow. I pray, Father, for your blessing to be with us. I pray that you will lead us as we go out from here. Thank you, Father. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. All right. So that's a wrap. I know we got some cleanup still outside by Angie's car, but if you didn't get the materials or you lost yours, there's some more up here. And with that, thank you very much. That's a wrap. Thank you. All right.